Okay, and welcome back. Working, trying to sort through all this to pull the best pieces out for you to take a look at. We will be putting the headlines up here within the next, half an hour, I guess, or so. So much going on, so many different angles, so many different facets of this disaster. Pretty pathetic to watch Trump continue to try to spin this politically somehow to make him look good. It's not going to work, Donald. Sorry. In fact, there's a poll out now which says Jerry Kushner and Donald Trump are rated the least trusted leaders on the entire coronavirus disaster. So we'll have that up for you very soon. Oh, and other people are saying, gee, Trump may delay the 2020 election. He can't do it. It's not in the Constitution. So strike two. Sorry, Donald. Not going to work. It's just amazing to watch this avalanche, this panorama of textured stories. Craziness. You can see people pushing their egos out there in stories, their misinformation, disinformation, their true conspiracy theories. And there is now evidence, more evidence, that this virus did come from bats. Now, that said, it was clearly worked on in the Wuhan bioweapons facility. What does that mean? Does it mean it was actually refined, accidentally got loose? We don't know. But there's now a very strong trail pointing back to a bat connection with this virus. What happened after that is anybody's guess. All right, we've got a lot of people on the program tonight. First up is Mischa Popoff, back tonight to talk about Bayer's wonderful product, Roundup, and what it may have to do with this plandemic, as many people call it. Hello, Mischa, welcome back.
Great to be here, Jeff. I'm really glad we're talking about this again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's definitely, let's get that straight. There's definitely something happening. The people who say there's nothing happening, it's all a hoax. Well, it is a hoax, but there's something happening, and that's part of the hoax.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, I shouldn't laugh.
Yeah, it's all right. Go ahead, laugh.
Yeah, so we've got Bayer with their wonderful product that was developed by Monsanto. Roundup, the generic name is glyphosate. And when I was on this program last year, I wrote an article for Dr. E. Michael Jones's Culture Wars magazine. I really thought it was suspicious, Jeff, as you might recall, that Bayer went ahead with the purchase of Monsanto while Monsanto was under threat at the time of hundreds of lawsuits.
Very suspicious. Very odd. Why would you buy something that was going down in flames? Yes.
Yes. And why would you pay full market value? I mean, at least get a deal, right? At least say, hey, you're under threat of lawsuit. But no, they paid, if you go back at the time and look at what their stock value was, they paid, there's all these formulas online to evaluate a company. Yeah, they paid $66 billion. And you might recall we discussed, I said...
Isn't that funny, Mischa?
Yeah.
66? Huh? Wow.
Again, I shouldn't laugh, Jeff, but I'm trying to stay sane here.
Yeah.
But I wondered about that too. In fact, I was wondering if it was maybe 66 with another 600 million, like 66.6 billion. But who knows what the fine print is. So yeah, it's very strange. Bayer had to borrow this money. So it wasn't just Bayer and all their lawyers and accountants and business gurus who said, yeah, go ahead, buy Monsanto. It was the lenders. The lenders are insured. There are rating agencies that rate companies like Bayer and also rate lenders' performance. And I don't... Maybe it's just that we're at a time when the Federal Reserve is just giving away money, so maybe it didn't matter. But I tend to think a lot of eyes had to scrutinize the deal. Now, as I said, when the deal began, there was only a few hundred lawsuits. It's not like buying a pack of gum where the transaction occurs in a few seconds. This took about a year and a half, 2 years for the whole thing to get approved by German, the EU, and American and Canadian governments. A lot of eyes were on the deal. And look at that, as soon as they bought it, as soon as they inked the deal, finalized it, we were up to, back when I spoke to you last year about this, I think we were up to almost 2,000 lawsuits. So right up until finalizing the deal, that they had a chance to, pull out, or as I said, ask for a better price, like get a better price on Monsanto. Well, they went ahead and bought it, so everyone's wondering, geez, Bowman, the CEO of Bayer, he must really be stupid. Well, again, like I said, it's not him. It's hundreds of smart people, to the extent lawyers and accountants are smart, but you know what I mean. People who would have foreseen the downfall of buying a company under litigation. Well, now it's making a lot more sense. At the time, of course, I said, well, it's simple. They're going after the desiccation market. Some people say, well, no, they bought Monsanto to get their GMO crops. Jeff, GMO crops have really maxed out. I mean, the farmers who are going to convert have converted. Europe's not converting. Russia's not converting. Most of Asia, like the Chinese are already making their own knockoff versions of GMO crops, so there's no market there. So I speculated last year, no, that they're going after the desiccation market. Roundup was traditionally always used before seeding, which made it impossible for it to get into the food, even though Roundup's, it's not as safe as they say, but at least then it was impossible to get in the food. Sure. Then they started using it in the middle of the season for GMO crops. Well, I'm jumping ahead to the worst one of all, and that's forced ripening. Because then it's going to be in the food. Oh, and then, Jeff, they say, well, they have guidelines. You have to wait, 2 weeks before harvesting a crop that was desiccated. Yeah, right, Jeff, and no one ever breaks those rules, right? So
never. No.
Yeah. So here we are with far fewer farmers farming the land. 90% less farmers than when I was a kid, when in the early 70s. 90% fewer. Well, Roundup allows for that decimation of the farm because harvest is your most important time. Seeding is flexible. If it rains during seeding, you just put seeding on hold for a week. No problem. You got lots of time. Even if you're up north where we get early frost in September, you might just switch crops from 120-day wheat to 90-day barley. No problem. Well, it's not ideal, but you're still going to be a farmer. But, harvesting the crop is the most expensive part. A combine or harvester costs upwards of
now this,
$1.5
for all of you listening, this is really important, and it's going to tie into this whole thing about gluten intolerance. Remember that? Big thing in restaurants and food, contains no gluten, gluten-free. We're getting there, so just hang in there and watch how this plays out.
Yeah, and it's going to tie into COVID as well. So there we are with fewer farmers, which means you have to desiccate the crop because you're probably going to hire a custom combining, a custom harvesting company because there's hardly any farmers anymore. So that's the market I predicted Bayer was going after. And by the way, they see real growth potential in the desiccation market in rice, which is grown here in America, but also obviously over in Asia. So
I didn't know rice was desiccated as well, dried out. That's interesting.
Yes, it's not yet, but that's what they're envisioning.
I see.
So basically, if we look at Europe, there's not a lot of crop desiccation done on the continent. There is some, but not as much as in England. Why? Because it's moist up in England. There's always fog. So that plus early frost is the impetus to force ripen the crop, to basically say, okay, Mother Nature, we're done. We're taking this baby off next week, and you just kill it. You basically kill it. And so now the Roundup is in the food. Okay, well, they always said Roundup was safe. Dr. Patrick Moore, one of the founders of Greenpeace, claimed you could drink a cup of it. He was ridiculed for that. Well, it turns out the way Roundup kills plants is by interrupting photosynthesis. Well, we don't photosynthesize, so they said, well, it's safe. Yeah, but the microorganisms in us use something akin to photosynthesis. It's called the shikimate pathway. Shikimate pathway. So if anyone wants to look that up, they can confirm that. Yes. So there we are, consuming Roundup, and they'll say, well, it's in very small amounts. But here's the secret with Roundup. If you're spraying a weed, The dosage is, of course, important. Like Paracelsus said, the dosage makes the poison, right?
Sure.
So the dosage is about just as important, Jeff, is whether the plant is in an uptake stage, which is why you never spray Roundup on a cold day, because the plant is basically just sitting there. It's not growing. Well, guess what you want to do?
Okay, you want to use it if you use it, it's got to be on interesting. Okay, I got it. Go ahead.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, so Roundup, unlike other pesticides, Roundup is more potent when the plant is uptaking, is growing. Well, if your immune system is stressed because you lost your job in the last month or maybe you are sick, your bacteria, the microorganisms in you are in a growth state. And they will absorb. So again, even if you have a tiny bit of Roundup, because that's what they'll say, right, Jeff? They'll say, it's parts per billion. Don't worry when you eat Cheerios. It doesn't matter. Well, first of all, your digestive system, your gut, it's going to absorb that Roundup just like a plant will. But more, again, this ties into COVID. More importantly, your immune system, the microorganisms that make up our immune system, they will be in a stressed growth state when they're being put into use by whatever, by a common cold or by cancer or anything.
Okay.
Or even,
we got about 10 minutes. Go ahead.
So there we have Bayer. I can't say they planned this, but they sure got in. And what they're going to do, Jeff, is I with all these lawsuits. So we went through the numbers. We were up to 2,000 last year. By the time we spoke, they're up over 50,000 now. 50,000 lawsuits. Here's what they're going to do.
All right.
They're going to admit, they're already hinting at this. It turns out Roundup is dangerous. But, Jeff, they're going to circle the wagons and make sure it's only deemed dangerous when you're applying it. They will do everything they can to protect desiccation, which means eating it. So all of the lawsuits so far have been for people applying it. None of them are for people eating it. And I think that's very suspicious, just that in itself. So here we have the COVID crisis. No one knows what's causing it. And I wouldn't say Roundup is causing it, but it's exacerbating it. Now, you mentioned gluten intolerance. People have been eating wheat for thousands of years. Only recently do things like gluten cause problems.
Right.
Or, Jeff, how about lactose in milk? People have been drinking milk for thousands. All of a sudden we have, and then let's also throw in anaphylactic shock from peanut allergies. I'm not an epidemiologist. I can't make all the connections. But when you have all these stupid vaccinations our kids are forced to take, when you have Roundup in the food, and it's been in our food now, Jeff, for about 15 years, that this desiccation has been going on. I think all of those are contributing factors to things like gluten intolerance and autism, things, in other words, that our grandparents never heard of. They would laugh at you if you said that 1 out of 30 kids in a classroom is basically a low-functioning sort of mentally retarded. They would think that's impossible. How could that happen? Anyway, that's where we are. I think they knew this. I think they just don't care. And once again, they want farmers to desiccate. And the only crops you can't desiccate are, of course, Roundup Ready crops because they're resistant. And I already said Roundup Ready crops have kind of maxed out. I think Bayer doesn't even care about Roundup Ready crops. They're going to keep producing them because they're a cash cow. But there's no growth there, Jeff. No new farmers are converted. All the farms that have converted have already converted. So once again, it's desiccation. That's going to be the growth market, and that's what's going to put it into your food in the morning.
Now, wheat farmers, when it comes time to harvest, I don't know how many millions of tons of Roundup they spray every year. Have you any idea? They understand wheat, all your wheat is sprayed, all your commercially non-organic wheat is sprayed with Roundup to make it ripen simultaneously so it can be harvested with least stress on the combines. So you're getting that Roundup in the wheat. It's in the bread, it's in the flour, it's in pasta, you name it. It's there.
Yeah. Now, briefly one example. They're hesitant to desiccate barley crops because, of course, barley has to be sprouted to make beer with it. So when you and now that reveals a problem.
If you desiccate that, it won't. I see. I got it.
Because they sprout barley and then they turn it and knock the sprout off, and then that increases the sugar content, and that's how they make beer. Now, if they're reluctant to desiccate a barley crop because it reduces the germination, and if barley doesn't sprout, you can't make beer. Well, then aren't they admitting that they're killing life? The other example is no one will desiccate hay. Farmers like hay to be nice and still green but dry. And if it rains, you got to stop haying. You might have to just write off a whole cut of hay. Usually farmers get 2 or 3 cuts a summer of hay. You never desiccate it because animals will spontaneously abort. Again, the agriculture industry knows this. They know these two things. You don't desiccate barley, you don't desiccate feed for animals. But they'll desiccate the oats that go into your Cheerios. No problem.
All right, let's loop this back to coronavirus and Bayer, the big company, Roundup. What do we know? Do we have any cross-referencing about the effects of Roundup vis-a-vis the human immune system, weakening it, putting a tax on it? It's got to put a tax on it because it's a toxin.
Yeah, well, here's what we have for Roundup. It's called the standard LD50 test. Lethal dose 50%. What they did back in the 70s, and they repeated it again in the 80s and the 90s, just to make sure the results were accurate. They do this with all chemicals. They do it with eyeliner for women. Everything gets tested. LD50. They feed it to a population of rabbits or rats until half of them die. And they say, that's called LD50. That's lethal dose. Killed 50% of these rats. They then divide that number by 1,000 to come up with the allowable dose for you and me. Well, that's fine if we're just talking about toxicology. But immunology, they have no idea. To answer your question, are there any dots? No, and they're not looking. They have no plan to. And I think, as I said, I think Bayer is willing to roll the dice and say, Roundup is dangerous. We got to restrict its use and its manufacture. That'll play well for them because they'll get a monopoly out of this. They'll admit it's dangerous. They'll say, but hey, we didn't invent it. It was those Monsanto guys. We just bought the company. We're victims in this. And they'll do, as I said, they'll circle the wagons and make sure to protect desiccation. And in other words, there will never be an immunological test on Roundup to see if it does in fact. And we know it does. We know it affects our immune system.
Of course it does.
We just don't know how much. Yes.
It's a toxin. Any toxin, in fact, all the toxins that people consume require an immunological response. Your immune system has to go after these. That's what it does. It goes after things that are dangerous to the body. Poisons, toxins, pollutants of any kind, herbicides, pesticides. So when you eat the garbage you're eating, most people, not you necessarily, but most Americans, most people around the world, commercially produced big ag crops and products, you're eating materials, toxins that will force your immune system to respond. Some people say, I've heard this said, I have no data on it, but at least 50% of your immune function is wasted fighting to defend you against the toxins in the food you eat to allegedly stay healthy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is. It is. So we're on, you have yellow alert, orange alert. Remember FEMA did that after 9/11? So, our immune systems aren't on red alert all the time, but they're somewhere, just like you say, they're hovering around 50% just because of the garbage we eat. The other bad one is sugar. And a little sugar's okay. You're better off with brown sugar or honey, of course. But sugar...
do that rather than aspartame, for sure.
Oh, goodness, yes. But the compounding issue with sugar, besides the fact that sugar feeds a lot of the bad bacteria in us, a little's okay, but sugar is being sprayed, Jeff. As you know, we have sugar beets. Well, they're Roundup ready. So that takes us back into the middle of the growing season. So you can't desiccate sugar beets, thank goodness. Well, but they're dousing it in the middle of the growing season. And remember, the original use for Roundup was preceding weed control. And even if it was dangerous, because of course all herbicides are dangerous or they wouldn't work. So even though it's dangerous, it was impossible to get into the food, Jeff, because it was sprayed 2 weeks before you seeded a crop. So...
What's the breakdown? What's the breakdown cycle of Roundup? After a week, they used to say it was the next day, but now they're saying it's far longer. What is it?
It depends on all the weather conditions, but the longest I've heard is 28 days. So there probably were farmers who were seeding into fields that still had active Roundup in them. But again, you had a whole growing season. Like wheat is 120 days, 3 months. You had 3 months for that Roundup to deteriorate. And yeah, to make a long story short, I don't think we ever ate Roundup before the year 2000. I don't think even in parts per billion we were eating it until around the year 2000. Yeah.
All right. Okay, Mischa, thank you very much for that. That whole gluten thing, remember, is probably a reaction to the toxicity of Roundup in the wheat you're eating. It's not the gluten. That's what a lot of people think. All right. You take care, Mischa. Thank you again. We'll talk soon. Okay. Good night. All right. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with a couple of people, Bob Greska and a scientist, to talk about the remarkable issue of hemoglobin losing its iron, thereby preventing hemoglobin in the red blood cells from uptaking oxygen from your lungs and distributing it to your body. Think about that. If the hemoglobin fails and the red blood cells are driving around like empty trucks with no oxygen, your major organs begin to suffocate and die. And then you suffocate and die. So some are saying quite clearly that it's not pneumonia that is killing coronavirus patients. Doctors are wrong. They're looking in the wrong place. It's the failure of the hemoglobin in the red blood cells to be able to continue to transport oxygen from the lungs to the body. More on that in a minute. Okay, and welcome back. It's a very complicated issue to many people. Are we treating coronavirus improperly? Is our understanding, and I'm talking about rank and file healthcare workers and medical workers, doctors, is our understanding of it, are we missing something? And you heard just before the break, I suggested that from what I've been reading, we just might be making a terrible mistake and not understanding the mechanism. When the lungs fill with fluid, we're going to drown and die. We know that. That's a given, yes. And lung damage is a very big problem with coronavirus. But the other issue is what really happens to the oxygen after the lungs take it in to the bloodstream, and the bloodstream is charged with delivering it to all the cells and the major organ systems in the body. What happens if there's something wrong there that this virus is involved in? Well, it seems that that's the case. Maybe you can call it all of the above, the lungs and the hemoglobin, but the hemoglobin in the red blood cells is losing its iron, it's dropping away, and the iron is what binds to the oxygen molecule that is in that hemoglobin in the red blood cell, which goes to the entire cellular network and organ network of the body. Without the ability of the red blood cells and the hemoglobin to uptake oxygen and deliver it, you suffocate. What a bizarre way to go. That's what may very well be happening in the majority of deaths in this pandemic. I don't have the answers. I have more questions. I have that much data for you. We're going to talk now with Mr. Bob Greska, a scientist from NASA who has created the best carbon-60 product, C60, Greska C60, and he is with us this first few minutes. We're going to have two people on this hour, MIT grad scientist and former NASA scientist next in just a few minutes, but I wanted to have Bob on. Bob, this is a very important issue, and an antioxidant is playing a big role in treating it. I'm not sure they know how it works, but these big doses of vitamin C that the Chinese began using and other people are using right now, vitamin C, of course, is known for its antioxidative product. It's a powerful antioxidation mechanism. Let's leave it at that. Welcome back, and tell us what you know about this whole situation.
Yeah, hi Jeff. Glad to be back on the air with you. It's a terrible plight that we're in right now, we want to bolster the body and make it stronger. And nothing seems to do that better, at least in my opinion and my experience, than carbon-60. It's kind of a miraculous. It helps strengthen, it helps support the body it supports many healthy bodily functions.
Let me jump in here. I take it every day, 2 droppers full in the morning, and I am giving myself. You talk about vitamin C being used to treat coronavirus. Now, I'm not going to make a comparison. I'm not saying that I'm not making any claims that carbon-60 is a cure. I'm going to tell you this, however, that carbon-60 is 180 times more powerful than vitamin C in terms of its antioxidant strength. 180 times more powerful than vitamin C in terms of its antioxidant strength. That's just one of the things it does. You might want to tuck that in the back of your mental folder and hang on to it. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I've heard that same report. I've even heard it's quite a bit stronger than that. It depends upon the bioavailability of the product.
Right.
But I'm going to divert that to that question is better for the biophysiologist. I'm not a bioscientist. I'm a carbon engineer, and I've worked on producing a very clean, pure carbon-60. We have the 4 main ingredients that make it work well in the body. It's a size of the particle. It's a nano size. It's a surface charge. It's very uniform. It's symmetric, and it has the ability to share an electron with free radicals and toxins. And the shape of it is spherical, so it's very biocompatible. And the purity, we have truly the only pure product on the market. Some of these other carbon-60s, they claim a 99% purity, but that's only the ratio of carbon-60 to carbon-70. They still have it's like 99 pennies and 1 dime, but it's still in some solution of other stuff. And that other stuff is residual solvents and, some contaminants from the carbon rods.
Well, I can also add that Bob C60 does not use solvents in any step of the process of manufacture. It's the only one that doesn't. It's absolutely pure. Now, you mentioned free radicals. Antioxidants are needed to deal with free radicals. Tell us a little bit about that, then I'm going to say hello to our scientist guest next.
Well, that's the breakthrough here with carbon-60. It's the nano size. It's the smallness of size. The antioxidants you get in red wine, berries, and, dark fruits are, the carbon-60 is 4,000 times smaller. And this nano size is
4,000 times, 4,000 times smaller than the antioxidants you can find in foods that you eat. This is truly nano, and that is magic, the size. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's so small, and, you're talking about free radicals that are missing electron. Electron has a very small charge, so you want a small mass, a small particle, to attract over there, over to it, and kind of neutralize that charge. And that's what the carbon-60 molecule does. It's got an abundance of, basically, if you look at a bottle of Gretzky's carbon-60, it's a bottle full of electrons. That's one way of looking at it. The sunflower oil we use, high-grade sunflower, carries the carbon, and the carbon carries the electron. And that's a good way to look at it. It's a bottle full of electrons.
Well, what's really amazing, and if any of you have carbon-60 at home, and if you don't, I hope you get some, Take the eyedropper out and put one little drop on your forearm and just rub it in lightly. And it's black. And then look back, and about 5 or 10 minutes. See what you see. It's gone. It goes right into the body. That's 4,000 times smaller than the antioxidant potential. These are truly nano. So a lot of companies claim nano this, nano that. This really is nano-sized. That's amazing.
Yeah, it penetrates so small that it penetrates right through the skin, your ligaments, your bones, everything, and it seeks out that plus and minus charges of those tiny charges of those electrons. And people can put it. We're even having we have tremendous results with it, putting it on topically, almost better than taking it orally. Actually, in a lot of cases, much better than taking it orally, because you're targeting it to that local area. Even if it's over an organ in your body, it will penetrate through the skin and find and seek and go into that organ. We have a clinician that did some data, and it shows that the health of the organ improved tremendously within 5 minutes. We see instantaneous, like 1 or 2 minute responses. So don't be afraid to try it topically on anything.
Give me one more example of a topical application of Greska's C60. One more.
Well, a quick one is like people that have chronic joint pain in their knuckles as they get older, and when they flex in their store, they can put it on there, and in about 2 minutes they're going to go, wow. Most people notice a difference, and we do that a lot at the shows that we go to, the expos, and put it on people, and see the instantaneous response. It's pretty amazing.
Fun. That's fun. All right, Bob. Thanks for stopping by, but more than that, thanks so much for creating this magnificent product. It's awesome. I thank you again on behalf of everyone out there who's benefited from it. Talk soon.
Well,
take care.
Let me put my website out there. It's c-60.com, and we have a phone number. You can call us anytime, 9 to 9 Denver time.
Yeah.
It's 720-600-6040. So
One more
we're
time.
available 720-600-6040.
Very good. All right.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
Take care. Okay, Bob. Good night. All right, next up, and I'm looking forward to this. Erica Kahn will join us now. She's in Boston. She's an MIT graduate, former biophysiologist at NASA, currently an independent researcher, and has spent the better part of the last 3 years compiling and reviewing 30 years of published studies on carbon-60, and most specifically those pertaining to the biological effects of carbon-60 in living organisms. Hi, Erica. Thanks for being here. We don't have a whole lot of time, but I want to see what we can get on the table out here to help people. Thank you very much.
Oh, hi, Jeff. Thanks for having me on tonight.
My pleasure. Okay, go ahead and jump right in. Tell us about vitamin C and that antioxidant potential and the potency of Greska's carbon-60 being 180 times that of vitamin C, and some say far more than that. I don't know how you quantify it because it's a nano-sized device. It would take some really sturdy lab work to do it, but at minimum, 180 times more powerful than vitamin C. That's what we have.
Well, we can look at vitamin C in a way that, insofar as how it's benefiting the immune system, it's actually supercharging your white blood cells. And that's beneficial because that's your first line of defense against pathogens trying to get into your body.
Sure.
And when that happens, there's a lot of free radicals that are produced. I mean, specifically, the white blood cells produce hydrogen peroxide to kind of fry those bugs up. And
here's a funny one. Now that you mentioned that, hydrogen peroxide, vaporized hydrogen peroxide has now suddenly and quickly been approved by the FDA to use to sterilize N95 respirator face masks for multiple uses.
Yeah, it is an oxidizing agent. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I guess, we need that to some degree, although, there is collateral damage when you, create these oxidative processes. But, the body does, that is how the body fights invaders. the white blood cells do produce hydrogen peroxide, and vitamin C helps them do that. But vitamin C becomes reduced in, itself and then needs to be recycled, so it's temporarily a pro-oxidant. So it has a drawback in that sense, and the body has a mechanism to do that.
That's very interesting. Say that again. Vitamin C initially, temporarily, is a pro-oxidant, not an antioxidant.
Yeah, once it goes into the body, it becomes oxidized. It gives up its electrons, and it is oxidized. Now, the body does have a pathway to recycle that, and if it's working properly, it happens efficiently. Of course, as we age, that happens less efficiently, or if there's a lot of toxins or a lot of other, electron stealers, that vitamin C may not get recycled.
Well, that's what HGH is for, right? That's a little joke.
Well, HGH is a growth hormone, but...
yes, I'm just kidding.
No, glutathione is really the pathway, or other thiols will recycle vitamin C.
Glutathione
so it can keep being used over and over again if that pathway is functioning.
Got it.
Now, C60, on the other hand, does not go through that.
C60. All right.
It does not go through that oxidation reduction process. That's, one of the ways that it's very different. And
so it hits the ground running.
Yeah, so it exerts its antioxidant effects by, and this is rather technical, what they call dismutation, or charge disproportionation, which means it's kind of like an electron sink. It holds the electrons, so it never goes around, losing electrons and looking for others to take back. So
that can be detrimental, correct?
Yeah, it can be, yep. So really what C60 is doing, and why it's so profound and beneficial, is that it's really regulating or modulating what they call the reduction and oxidation reactions within the body, because, we do need some free radicals for these processes. For fighting infections, you've got to be able to generate hydrogen peroxide to kill the microbes coming in. You need hydrogen peroxide for normal thyroid function.
Oh, Erica, one quick second. People don't understand that our bodies actually produce hydrogen peroxide to kill things. That's always been a fascination to me, that it does. And it does.
Yeah, that's the main mechanism.
Yeah. So, okay, go ahead.
But one thing that the C60 is doing that's rather unique is that research has shown that it's a very, very powerful SOD mimetic. And what is that? Well, SOD SOD is an enzyme that your body produces to neutralize the superoxide radical that is produced mostly in the mitochondria, but in other areas as well. And when that superoxide radical is produced, it can go on to create further damage. It can interact with other molecules in your body and go on to do damage. Now, when we're young and healthy, we produce plenty of SOD that will neutralize that superoxide radical. But as we get older or we're exposed to more toxins, our mitochondria don't work as well, and they tend to leak these free radicals. The damage accumulates, and things quickly, get out of hand. What C60 will do is it will double up as an SOD mimetic. In other words, it's doing the same thing your body's natural superoxide dismutase will do. It'll quench or actually catalyze that superoxide radical and turn it back into molecular oxygen and hydrogen peroxide.
What a bonus.
Both of which are very beneficial, for cellular function. So it's minimizing the damage from the superoxide. Now you've got free molecular oxygen to work with again, and now you've got hydrogen peroxide. Now what happens with that hydrogen peroxide, that's another story. But C60 is a very, very potent SOD mimetic, a superoxide dismutase mimetic, and that is why it's such a powerful antioxidant.
The size of it.
Working at the level of the mitochondria.
Right. The size of it makes it, I guess, the bioavailability is second to none. It's tiny.
It's tiny, and that's
small.
why. I mean, most of the superoxide free radicals that your body produces is at the level of the mitochondria. And if you can kind of control that, we don't want to indiscriminately suppress all free radicals that our body is trying to produce. But if we can moderate them, so that the damage is minimized,
right,
and send them down the pathway that's beneficial and not left to wreak havoc. I think we've got an upper hand on a lot of different things, a lot of different physiological processes. We're staying kind of ahead of the game.
Right. With and again, I'm speaking just for myself. I'm not making claims on behalf of Bob or C60 and anything like that, but they're using enormous amounts of vitamin C. I know they were in Wuhan, China, among other places. They're using it all over to treat coronavirus infections. If vitamin C is effective, and it has to go through this transformation, it would seem to me, and I'm asking you as a scientist, wouldn't C60 be one hell of a lot more effective and immediately?
Well, the reason IV vitamin C works in these cases of infections and even cancer, it is a cancer therapy, alternative cancer therapy, is because when you introduce it in supraphysiological amounts through an IV, you couldn't possibly do this orally because it would immediately result in diarrhea. The bowel tolerance would you couldn't do it. So it has to go in IV. But what happens is it's immediately reduced or oxidized, and it creates hydrogen peroxide. So it really, IV vitamin C is actually an oxidative therapy. And so,
that reminds me of IV ozone therapy.
Yes.
And now that's 2% ozone, 98% medical grade oxygen. So don't anyone think it's pure ozone, because it's not. But that's a very effective therapy as well. Okay, so we have Greska's carbon 60. We can rub it on our body and it'll vanish in minutes. I've seen it. I've done it. It's almost kind of like a magic show. There's this big black wet spot and then it's gone. So it goes into the body. It's not IV, but it sure must get into the bloodstream without much trouble if it goes right through the skin.
Yes,
so there
absolutely.
You go.
But again, it seems to be improving, or it's known to improve cellular signaling. And exactly how it's doing that, we don't know. But it is. Whether it's just cleaning up the debris that's floating around in people's bodies because of all the toxins. It's certainly improving cellular signaling. It's increasing cellular voltage.
Right. Most people are so toxic, I would think a germ would just jump aboard with glee, and their immune systems are down. I'm serious. It's bad. Americans are not
and
healthy.
You have to consider that, is this the reason we're having this crisis? This horrendous toxicity that we're exposed to now.
Thank you very much. I think it's playing a hell of a big role, and no one will talk about it. Half of America is obese, not overweight, obese.
Yep.
Now, how can you be healthy? Even if you weren't toxified, how could you be healthy being obese? You can't.